very much for joining. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited to take you through the information session today on our tailored GP practice apprenticeships, and this one specifically the GP practice operations management. Just a little bit of housekeeping to begin with. So if you do have questions, if you could please either pop them in the chat box or save them up till the end. We are recording today's session, so hopefully that's all okay. We will potentially use the recording of the content. We won't use recordings of any of the questions at the end. So yeah, just to say, I think most of you have your cameras off, but if you do want to turn your camera off, obviously completely your choice. That way that you won't, there won't be anything identifiable on the recording relating to yourselves. So let's kick off. I think content here today is going to take us around probably be about 35-40 minutes, so plenty of time for those questions that I'm sure that you will have. And we're going to cover apprenticeships in general. We're going to then dig into the specific curriculum, so what you'd actually be studying on this program. We'll obviously cover the likes of eligibility, suitability, and funding. We'll really give you, I hope you can leave today with everything that you need to make obviously a more informed decision as to whether this apprenticeship is right for you, if you're a potential candidate, or indeed someone that you might be working with. Conscious some of you here may well be employers, line managers of potential apprentices. So I'm going to kick off with just a little bit about community matters. I think a lot of you will probably know us already from the work that we do within the training hubs in London. So we've been in operation since 2010. We're a management consultancy training services provider. As I said, a lot of you will know our work in the training hubs. So we manage and operate the North East London training hub. We're involved within the North Central London training hub as well. So when it comes to apprenticeships, all this good work that we were doing within training hubs, the workforce development, obviously the training that we were putting on, the needs mapping, we just simply had the practices that we were supporting come to us sort of 4 or 5 years ago and say, hey, you're putting on all this great training. What about apprenticeships? Because this is a great opportunity, right? They're government funded. They provide a really comprehensive education, many more benefits that I'm sure we'll get into as we go. So yes, since 2021, we have been an accredited apprenticeship provider, and we're obviously providing apprenticeships to the training hubs, very much tailored to that audience, but also further afield. We've sort of branched out and providing apprenticeships now to, yes, primary care, that's our sort of core sector, but then wider within the NHS, wider within the public sector, and indeed the third sector as well. As you can see, provide a variety of apprenticeships, many of them tailored to general practice. And today we're obviously here to talk about the GP practice operations manager. Okay, so why did we decide to begin the process a couple of years ago of tailoring an apprenticeship specifically around this standard, the operations manager? Why did we tailor it to primary care? And why are individuals and practices going on this journey with us? So we took a bit of time engaging with stakeholders across the training hubs and across primary care a couple of years back, and we went through a bit of a needs analysis, understanding what sort of are the roles typically within general practice, and what are we seeing in terms of what are the big shifts, what are the big ambitions and goals that we might have, and maybe what are some of the challenges that we're seeing. And I think what we learned from those conversations is that we have We have a general administrative population who are brilliant at what they do, but what we are also seeing is the sort of necessary skills for that administrative population are shifting and they are changing, particularly with the sort of, I said, the advent of digital. It's been around for a long time, but certainly the advent of AI, and certainly as we're seeing when we look at the 10-year plan, a lot more focus on digital than perhaps there ever has been. As well as pressures that we're seeing on primary care in terms of people coming to practices with non-medical needs, trying to free up the time of GPs, I think has become more and more important over the last few years. So there's a sort of recognition that there are skills needs that are sort of growing and developing both for that administrative population and for those sort of practice managers. And also what we're seeing is that we have a lot of people up at this level who've been with the organization for a very long time, but actually may be departing at some stage in the near future. So it's really important that we have that succession planning, that we have those staff coming through and working their way up general practice to sort of take on those roles moving forward. And I think what was also acknowledged is, particularly in this area, we're also seeing quite a lot of churn. So we're seeing people come into general practice, but for whatever reason, we're seeing, and this is, statistically, we see this to be true, that they are leaving within a relatively short period of time. So it was a realization that we need training to create these skills for the sort of new needs that we might have and the needs that we might have moving forward. And what we also really want to do is develop people so that they can move upwards, but also to develop people so that we're keeping them within the organization for longer. Because when we look at apprenticeships, that people are looking to always improve. They do want to have that mobility, and also we see a greater level of loyalty when people are provided that training opportunity. They are more likely to stay in practice longer. So we came up with a couple of different apprenticeships that we tailored. The business administrator for sort of this segment of the population, and then the practice operations manager, which is really sort of first-time managers upwards, but very much encompassing, individuals in assistant practice manager positions, and indeed we have individuals joining these cohorts who have been practice managers for 5 or 10 years time, but are looking to get that sort of formal education, that formal training around it. And as I've already mentioned, very much with an eye on the 10-year plan. What are the different skills that we need moving forward, with all the focus on productivity improvements, these big shifts that are happening. Do we have the leadership capabilities? Do we have the change management capabilities? And do we have those digital capabilities sort of all the way through that general practice population? So that was sort of the kind of task that was set at. I think I mentioned all these things already in terms of the why, the changing skills needs, people nearing departure, the succession planning that's becoming more and more important, and those big shifts as we move to the neighbourhood, and again, how do we get that change management? How do we get that leadership experience to take us there and do so effectively? Now, apprenticeships aren't going to be the answer to all of that. There's a lot. There's a lot of opportunities there, a lot of challenges there. But what we can say is we do see significant success within apprenticeships. I'll talk more about success we see as community matters. But a kind of overall, we are seeing a record number of starts in the NHS. Last year, an up 11% on the previous year. We're seeing that 90% of individuals, they are staying after the end of that 12, 18-month training, whatever that training length will be, depending on the apprenticeship. 90%, do stay in post, and many stay in post for a lot longer after. Appreciate Skills for Health 2020. This is, sort of 5, 6 years old now. But certainly what we learned from that, and I believe it's anecdotally, I believe it's still true of today, is that not only people staying after, but then we actually, when we analyze individuals who undertake an apprenticeship, and we compare them with the individuals who haven't within the NHS, we see 15% increase in retention rate. And we also see that individuals are moving into more senior roles within 3 years. So it's really helping with that mobility piece. So that's why we're doing it. We'll talk more about the individual apprenticeship in a moment. But just to say that this is designed and delivered by people who understand your organisation. Obviously, all that experience that Community Matters has within the training hubs, translating obviously into a very tailored curriculum, a very tailored experience, and it's not just our tutors who would be delivering this training for you, or the person within your organisation who might be undertaking it along the way. Will actually draw in lots of stakeholders that we work with within the training hubs. I mean, I've attended 2 sessions this year from my position. I'm head of development, so I'm not involved in the delivery. But 2 of the training sessions that I went along to, one of them we had our tutor, but then we also have a physician associate within one of the practices who very kindly offered to come in that day and do some bits on time management. We had an individual practice manager who was also a transformation lead, who came into one of our IT and digital sessions. So you are getting a very, very tailored experience with this program. Yes, you've got the underlying standard, which is operations manager, but it's, and you'll see more when we get to the next slide, it's very much contextualized. And when you go on the training journey with us, you'll be in a cohort with probably 10 to 15 others, and they'll only be from GP practices and PCNs. And I think, when I speak to our apprentices, one of the things they feed back from in terms of what's been one of the great things about this experience is actually the opportunity to get in a room with individuals in similar roles, peers, if you like, from other organizations, other practices, and sort of share that best practice and knowledge with them. So the curriculum's tailored, and also when it comes to the money, you have to put your own hands in your pockets to fund this training. Your practice doesn't need to put their hands in the pockets or find budget to fund this training. The training is covered by what we call the Skills and Growth Levy, and that will all be organised again. There'll be things that we'll ask the practice to do in terms of forms to fill in and accounts to set up, but the funds will all be organised either by Community Matters or by your individual training hub. Okay, so let's take a look at the curriculum now. Who's the program for? I should say first. Don't take this as an exhaustive list. These are just some of the titles that we see on the application forms that come through, and ultimately the individuals who undertake it. Really, I would say it's for individuals who are managing either things or people, ideally both. And yeah, as I said, up from a first-time manager all the way up to an experienced practice manager. You must be able to apply the skills into the role. So when we look at the curriculum, the next slide, some of you have probably seen it already in the course fact sheets that I sent you. You need to be looking at that and saying, okay, actually, I can see there's a module on funding and finance. Like, I am in a position where I can learn those things about funding and finance, and I can actually apply it to the role. You might look at that fact sheet and go, oh, actually, I can only do 80% of those. That may not be a problem, but you may need to speak with your organisation to get some exposure to some of those things, so that you can fulfil the needs of the apprenticeships, which is always to demonstrate that what you're learning you can apply into the job role. Because as we probably all understand about apprenticeships, it's theory, but it's also experiential. It's learning while we're working. You shouldn't have too much experience or prior education in the topics. What we will do with individuals is during the onboarding process, we'll kind of ask you to score yourself against those modules. And if people come back and say, well, I'm already a 9 out of 10, then we sort of ask the question, well, why undertake this apprenticeship? Yes, the qualification can be really, really important. Great to get a qualification that's equivalent to a foundation degree. But we will always challenge you on, is it actually going to test you enough? Is it going to develop you enough to warrant the time that you're going to take, and the commitments that we need from you to go on that journey? But as I said, we also have very experienced practice managers on this program, so not to deter you if you are experienced, but we will ask those questions. You must be over 16, not in full-time education. Don't think it's going to be a problem for anyone on this call today. Should work at least 20 hours a week. Most people are working full-time, so they're working 30 or above. But if you're working less than that for any reason, we can still accommodate it. The hours are important. They're important for this reason, is this commitment of 6 hours a week. It's part of the off-the-job training requirement. So 6 hours or 20%, there's some sort of flexibility around it. But obviously, if you're working 30 hours, then that 6 hours is 20% of your time, becomes easier to accommodate. Might be a little bit harder to accommodate if you're more towards the 20 mark. Probably one of the biggest things to be thinking about overall is, how are you going to find those 6 hours a week? That should be 6 hours within your working hours. It's obviously not up to us to dictate what your working hours are, or indeed how flexibly you work. We know some people are working, spending time working in the office. We know they're also maybe spending time working from home. So you have the flexibility to undertake those hours, and we'll cover more kind of what those hours constitute. You have the flexibility to sort of take that time, or at least quite a lot of it, sort of when you need to, and work it into your schedule. And we absolutely do have individuals who talk about the fact that they may spend time in the evenings or at weekends on some of this work. But I should stress that that's not the case for most. Most are fitting into their existing working hours, and they should seek support for their practice to be able to do that. So I think that's really important just to keep in mind. You shouldn't be looking at this and going, okay, I'm going to add 6 hours a week to my working week, because as we know, people are busy, and that could be unsustainable. Okay, and you should be employed in England and resident in the UK or the EA for the last 3 years. Again, I'm sure not an issue for anyone on this call right now. So in terms of the curriculum, so it's 16 months on this apprenticeship, and then it's plus 5 months of what we call the apprenticeship assessment. So at the end of that 16-month period, you'll sort of finish all the core curriculum with us, all the workshops and teaching sessions, but then you'll have 5 months preparing you for your endpoint assessments, and you'll still need those 6 hours a week. Whether you take them or not, again, depends on the individual, but you'll still need those 6 hours a week preparing for those final stages. Giving you just a little bit of flavour what those final stages look like. So that there are no exams per se, but what you will be doing all the way through your apprenticeship, and we'll be absolutely supporting you with this and developing it, is kind of every topic that you go through. We'll be setting you kind of a mini assessment on it. It doesn't go towards the sort of grade here, but we'll be setting you a task of, what do you understand about that module? How have you applied it? And you'll be building this portfolio, and your portfolio, you'll interview with the endpoint assessment, who's independent from us at the end, and again, we'll prep you for that. But then you'll be sort of showcasing everything you've learned within that portfolio. And what you'll also do is, you've got the project report, so you'll pick, again, probably from some of the modules, you'll pick a couple of modules and a project that you've run. So it might be, it might be a project that you've run on finance and budgeting in primary care that we feel and you feel really showcases your learnings and your qualities, and then you'll be asked to obviously write up a report on it. So yeah, hopefully it gives you an idea of kind of the end. In terms of the delivery, I'll go into more detail, but ultimately we're looking at a blended learning approach. So you're going to be, what we mean by that is it's going to be a mixture of the workshops and the lectures that we put on, which will be monthly. One in every three of those will be face to face, so they will take place kind of within your locality. So if you're in London, it'll take place in London. Anyone on the call outside of London will look to put something on within your local area. So every quarter you'll have the face-to-face sessions. The other two will be virtual, will be online. So yeah, once a month, pretty much a whole day spent on the lectures and the workshops there, and then the rest of the time is going to be some other contact hours with us, so a one-to-one that will happen between you and your tutor on a monthly basis online, and then it will be self-paced learning mixed with the application of the skills into the workplace. And I'll talk more about what that looks like in the next couple of slides. I won't go through the core curriculum here in detail, but operational management in healthcare, that's gonna be looking at things like NHS structures, care networks, integrated care systems. So it's obviously very much focused not just on this theory of operational management, but how it actually works in the environment that you work within. Managing multidisciplinary teams, so that would be looking at things like conflict resolution, mediation. How do you manage stakeholder relationships both within the organization and indeed outside? Leadership and management skills, finance and budgeting. So that's understanding specifically NHS funding and budgeting processes, financial forecasting, and cost control, and then managing contracts. So contracts like QoF or DAS or LES. IT data management in primary care. Again, you'll be learning generic things, so AI, digital systems, data analysis with Excel, but you'll also be learning about actually how does that work within EMIS and Accurix. So hopefully that gives you, a flavour of the curriculum. I think all of you have course fact sheets. If you don't, I'll send them back out again to you from some sort of initial engagement that I've had with you. So hopefully you've got an idea of what's involved, and hopefully, as I mentioned earlier, you can look at that and go, okay, I feel like I'm in a position where I'm able to apply all those skills into practice. I've got a little video here. I'm just conscious. I'm conscious of time. I want to leave some time for some questions. So I think I'll send it out afterwards to you all. It's about a 5-minute video, but it goes through the experience of one of our apprentices who works in Newham. And this individual is as a practice manager, actually a practice manager across a couple of surgeries, has been a practice manager for 5 years. And yeah, talks really well about kind of why she started, what were the motivations, how this program has helped her in her role and sort of shaped her career ambitions moving forward. So as I said, I'll drop that out in the follow up to this call. Okay, so just to talk about what the learning will look like, really important to let you get your heads under the bonnet a bit and start to sort of set expectations of how we will support you and also to a degree kind of what's expected from you. So I talked about it being a sort of hybrid learning model. I talked about those 6 hours each week that's expected from you. So yes, broken up across those monthly sessions, the one-to-ones with the tutor, the workplace activities, and then that self-paced learning, those individual studies, which obviously will set you readings and videos to watch, and other materials to go away and find out more. The one-to-one sessions I mentioned. So I think that these act as an opportunity. Let's say your one-to-one sessions a week or two after that workshop. It gives you an opportunity to discuss anything you've missed, maybe that parts of the session you need to improve your understanding, so you can do that with a tutor. But they'll also obviously be helping you to build this portfolio that I've referenced. They'll be helping you with any specific challenges that you might be facing as well. We know, it's a long journey. It's 16 months. There's going to be times where you might be facing challenges in your day to day, which for whatever reason might be impacting your progress on the apprenticeship. So it's also about, how can we help you to sort of navigate some of those stumbling blocks. So yeah, the one-to-one sessions I think are really, really vital, and they're also supported further by the tripartite reviews. So this is important to understand, because it's also important to understand from the perspective of what your line manager needs to do. So we would expect your line managers to attend a meeting every quarter with yourself and with the tutor. And that's a more formal meeting to see where you're up to, how far ahead, how far behind you might be, and make sure that we have an action plan, and we can navigate any hurdles that might be there, and we can ensure that you're supported to really succeed on the apprenticeship. So there's, I think particularly for this apprenticeship, because a lot of you will be experienced, you probably find that you're all working fairly independently. Your manager doesn't need to help you so much in necessarily getting exposure to different elements of what we're teaching you. But I think they are really, really important in terms of freeing you up so that you can undertake the apprenticeship, and then just being there for that quarterly session. If you're a practice manager, no questions often come up. Well, what's that going to look like? Because you're kind of already at the top. But again, it would probably be one of the partners, I guess, just making sure that they do have the time to attend this meeting. But it is only once a quarter, we should add. And it's a 1 hour meeting. All the one-to-one sessions and the tripartite reviews will be 1 hour. So the other support we'll give you is preparing for that apprenticeship assessment. I've talked a little bit about that. Obviously helping you with the portfolio, and then mock exams, and we don't really have an exam element, but it will be a mock of what does it look like when you have that interview. How can we prep you for that interview? How can we kind of simulate that? I think I've talked about this. A third-party organisation will carry this out, because we have that gateway process where we're doing the things that I've just mentioned. We've never passed anyone through who has failed. So ultimately, you're looking at a grade, a pass or a distinction. Hopefully, a distinction. We're seeing lots more individuals in the last year or so qualify with that highest grade. So on the learner commitment, I thought this slide might be useful just to maybe help you visualize a little bit more. And I should say before we delve into this, for each individual, depending on the apprenticeship, depending on your job role, what you do day to day, this will look different for each individual. Obviously, the 20% is always going to be the same, but actually, what it's comprised of may look different for each individual. But as an average, to kind of give you a picture, you've got 26 hours that you're spending on the apprenticeship each month, and these things are fixed, right? Your teaching sessions, 7 hours altogether. You'll be spending probably about 4 hours on your workbook. It might be less than that, but we normally expect you to clock the workbook activities up to 4 hours, and that's just that kind of review of each individual module. How have you understood it? How have you used it, etc. And then you've got your one-to-one meeting. So, those program contact hours are taking up roughly sort of 50% of your time on course. And then the rest of it is self-paced learning. So, the reading that we might give you, for example, but you've got a big chunk of it that's workplace application. So that is covered here. That's things that you all already are doing within your job role, but you're just so happen that you're using, let's say you've learned something new about project management, right? And you've got a project that you are then undertaking during that 2-3 week period, whatever that might look like, and you've learned something about agile or waterfall or some kind of methodology, and that project has taken 10 hours of your time, then you can clock that up against your overall apprenticeship hours. So yeah, just important. I think a lot of people look at that 6 hours and think, okay, is that 6 hours away from the surgery contact time with community matters? No, it's not. It's a mixture of things, and a lot of it's actually the work that you're kind of already doing. So hopefully that helps to bring that to life. Just a reiteration of those commitments, really, guys. So things that we need you to do one-off during the onboarding process. Weekly attending any learning sessions, those progress reviews, and then ongoing down here that really the application of the skills into the workplace, and then your line manager supporting with the onboarding. Talk more about that in a moment, and then also being there for those quarterly reviews, and potentially helping with any of these things. Again, I think for you guys, it'll probably be more about protecting the learning time, because you're not a junior, so they may not be helping with these things, but it depends what role you might be sort of pivoting into, or whether it's more of your existing role and your upskilling. And then our commitment to you is obviously the quality of the teaching, the dedicated support assessor sessions, helping you to prepare for the final assessment, and also more broadly effective feedback loops that we're taking in the form of anecdotal surveys that we send around across obviously all of our cohorts to make sure that we're always improving. So if you were to come on board, this is what the onboarding flow looks like. So we would set you up on Aptum, which is a system that we use. Pretty much everyone in the apprenticeship uses Aptum. So that's kind of where all your learning is captured. So it's just a go-to place for, okay, what's my reading that I need to do? How did I do on the last assessment? What's my feedback, etc., etc. So you need to be set up in there. Your line manager needs to be set up in there as well. So there's obviously some admin that you need to do. There are some agreements that need to be signed. There's an application form that obviously needs to be filled in. And then we also need to ask your employer to either set up an apprenticeship service account if they haven't already, or get access to their existing one, and follow some steps that we ask them to undertake to make sure that the funds that will be provided by the organisation that's transferring the levy to you, that can all be accommodated. So I would say probably to set expectations that it's going to be during the month, depends when you apply, but most people apply at deadline. So during the month from the end of March to the end of April when the course starts, the expectation should be there's probably an hour or two that we would expect from you, and there's probably half an hour, an hour's time maximum from your employer that we would expect in terms of signing documents, setting up accounts, etc. Finally, what do GP practices? So, this is the ones that we are working with. What do they think of this program? So, 63 members of staff have joined the program in the last 8 months, all from primary care across London, and some from outside of London. Those training hubs that we're working with, and 86% rating the program either excellent or very good. So, high degree of satisfaction, as I'm sure you can see. And then in terms of next steps, deadline for application is the end of March. Program starts end of April. I will send out after this call. I think all of you already have the course fact sheets, but I'll send them again anyway. And then I'll send the application forms, and obviously you've got a nice bit of time between now and the end of March to fill those in. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'll open it up to any questions.